Hello and welcome back, my dear fellow shining beings from all times, all spaces, and the multifold dimensions. I am Sylvia Hartmann, the creator of modern energy, and I'm going to be talking about spiritual soul healing today. And that's just a wonderful thing. That's a keyword thing because spiritual soul healing is like wet water fish. Nada, of course, soul healing has to be spiritual in nature. It has to be done at the energy levels if this is ever to be done at all. And I'm just super happy because today is the beginning of the Great Dragon Rising fairy tale event. And I have been absolutely fascinated and delighted by fairy tales ever since. Well, they were given to me by my own soul, I must presume, during 20 years ago, during a time when I was writing guided meditations and hypnotic inductions that were designed to stimulate the energy system, and especially this fine high level that I call the psychic circuitry, the soul level. It's a very different thing from the usual sort of meridian flows and the heart of energy and these things that you can feel so profoundly in your own body, what creates all of our emotions. But the psychic circuitry, to me, this level of the energy system where the soul resides, is just a different place. It is fine, it is complex, and it requires magical solutions. Well, what do I mean by magical solutions? I mean exactly that, magical solutions, where a princess will kiss a frog and he transforms into a prince because a spell was broken. That's a magical solution. That is not the way we think in the hard. It's a completely different level of reality, a different place, a place where we think differently about everything and in a very different way. And I believe that spiritual soul healing, you can't think your way out of your soul problems. That's just not going to happen. You can't fix that with a screwdriver or even with artificial intelligence from the heart. You need these magical solutions. And fairy tales are exactly that. They are a special form of storytelling, which is the most ancient, most humane, most human way in which we communicate knowledge, insight, experiences, and life lessons. And fairy tales are for the soul. They are for the soul. So 20 years ago, I was writing hypnotic inductions. I was writing the Hypnodreams trilogy. And that was really, really fascinating. I would ask my dear energy mind, which in my opinion is sitting between the soul and the conscious understanding, to give me something that I didn't even know I needed. And so this stream of information would start up, and the Hypnodreams trilogy is the result of that. And I was working, I think, on Hypnodreams 3, Freedom, when I sat down, beautiful sunny morning, asked for some dear energy mind, give me that which I need, even if I don't know I need it. And it started literally with once upon a time there was a land and there was a golden horse and it was free. And it was a fairy tale. It was in the fairy tale format. Spontaneous, never thought about it, never thought about writing fairy tales. There it was. And I wrote The Golden Horse, which is my very first fairy tale. And I was just blown away by it. I was blown away by the energy movements in that story, the sensations, the way the magical solutions worked. And I knew I had found something that was really important, really important. And so I continued to write some fairy tales. Sometimes they would come completely spontaneously when I was writing something else. I might be writing a book, and all of a sudden it would switch into a fairy tale type of story. And I was like, wow, wow. So here we are dealing with a problem that is not, you can't tap it away, you can't meditate it away. It needs this magic from the fairy tales. Yeah. And The Golden Horse was my first book of fairy tales. And there are some stories in there that are my favorite stories of all time. My absolute favorite story of all time is the lead story of the Golden Horse, which is Ilori's Joy. And there's actually a recording of me reading this out. And you can tell from in Ilori's Joy how closely related that still is to a guided meditation. How it just one step away into this fairy tale realm. It's fascinating. Also in the Golden Horse is my possibly one of my favorite fairy tales of all time, or stories even, which is the 12th Spirit. I remember writing that and being just so amazed by it. So amazed by it, in floods of tears as I was writing it. The energy movements, and that's what this is about. This is about energy movements. It's not about words. It is about how fairy tales have this power to create these powerful energy movements that literally can't be had in any other way. They can't be had in any other way. There's no other way to do this. It's fascinating. It's beautiful. It's awesome. And I am so delighted that the Golden Horse found its fans over the decades, although all my fiction writing has always been way on the back burner as far as anybody's attention goes, as far as our own attention has gone, because, we're writing, publishing, and creating teaching patterns for energy work, for modern energy work, to help people overcome stress. And the fairy tales are always on the back burner, and they should not be. And so I could not be more delighted that we're finally having a focus on this. And over the last 3 months, I have been working, I've been working very hard, long hours, but I loved every minute of it. So I wrote, or rather put together, the fairy tales that had come about at various times during the time since The Golden Horse was published in 2006, I think it was. And that's a collection of new fairy tales. And that was wonderful, and that's what I was working on when all of a sudden I was tidying up some papers at the end of work. I had this flash of insight, and I realized how fairy tales work, how the structure of fairy tales works. And that's where the fairy tale formula comes from. So I was dealing with 3 fairy tale books. Now there was Dragon Gold, which has all my original illustrations in it, and it takes a long time to make these illustrations. It really does. I don't think that you can just put them in there in a day or two. It's not. There's so much work in the illustrations. Work. It's not work. I love it. I love doing it. I just wish I had, more time for it if I could. So, Dragon Gold, yes. My new fairy tale collection. And it's beautiful. It's got some truly beautiful stories in it, including one funny story, which is the Grumble Gnome. Dragon Gold's beautiful. Beautiful stories. Stories for the soul. And when somebody else reads these stories, their soul is going to respond to that, to the energy movements inside the stories. And they're going to come out and feel better about things. And so I thought, well, I'm going to give the Golden Horse some love. So I created a second edition for that. And this time it includes my original, the aspects from 2003. Because the Golden Horse comes from a time when, at the same time, modern energy art came into being. and the understanding what art is and how to make art that is energy rich, that the energy body of other people respond to as well, which is a fascinating combination. But in 2003, you couldn't print color images in a book without it becoming prohibitively expensive. And so somebody else was hired to do some black and white illustrations for the original edition of The Golden Horse. And to be fair, that's always made me sad because the images belong into the book. So this was my opportunity to put that to rights and put the actual illustrations into The Golden Horse. And The Golden Horse got a lot of love from me, and it was wonderful reconnecting with that. Because the thing with fairy tales is that they're timeless. You can read a fairy tale from the Middle Ages, before that, from the pharaonic times. You can read a fairy tale and you can still completely understand what's going on in the story and what's happening and the magical solutions. It's awesome. Fairy tales literally arc across time and space to our ancestors who told them around the fires in the caves, Love it. It's such a magical, mystical, wonderful thing, this whole fairy tale thing. And the whole soul thing, the immortal soul, wants some attention. And fairy tales is an easy way to give them that. Yeah, and so the third part of this massive project was then the fairy tale formula. And the workshop notes had to be turned into a book, and they needed more illustrations, and I wrote some more. So the fairy tales as examples, as illustrations for the fairy tale formula. Added some things about how to not edit your own work to death. And I am hoping deep down that the fairy tale formula will also lead to some of the people who done the workshop to write some fairy tales and share them with us and find a way that we can share them with each other. That's going to be very much my intention for 2024, that this should come to pass. So in the meantime, if you are still here and listening to me, then you are one of the people who has a sense that fairy tales are important, that souls are important, that magical solutions are important, especially to the problems that we have that we simply can't think our way out of and go round and round and round in circles. Man, we need some more magic in this life. Not fake magic, but this real magic that comes from human experience, that comes from love's true love's kiss. True love's kiss breaks any spell. And that is true. At the energy levels, at the soul levels. And to learn something about that. The modern world is so stress-riddled and so confusing and so weird. To come back to these true principles of spirituality, of having souls, of being an immortal being. And how can we bring that into our crazy worlds? Well, we can read a fairy tale. It takes 10 minutes. Or we can write a fairy tale. And that takes an hour. And we will feel better for it. And we do feel better for it. And there's many of us who really, really need this. Spiritual soul healing. Soul evolution. Yeah, that's the name of the game. So, blessed be to the fairy tales. Really, blessed be to the fairy tales. They're wonderful, they're mystical, and we talk about the magical child within. What else could that be than our own immortal souls? Having said that, thank you for listening. Go and take a look at the fairy tale formula and the whole Dragon Rising fairy tale event. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And if you are a writer of fairy tales, that's even better. If you're going to become a writer of fairy tales, thanks to the fairy tale formula, I would just absolutely love to hear your stories. With lots of love, keep on shining, and please, please look after your dear immortal soul, the magical child within. That is true, and that is real, and that is extremely powerful. With lots of love. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening. Take a moment to leave a comment on this video. That really helps the channel. Click the like button and subscribe to receive the latest news from the energy dimensions. See you soon for the next video.